Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Michigan Outdoors Report Live. And here we are again off schedule. We did a live last night with a special guest, and we're breaking routine again. Here we are on a Tuesday. It ain't Wednesday, but don't you worry. Wednesday Night Live is booked as well, and we're going to have another special guest for you tomorrow. But this evening, I am joined by Tim, of course. You see there, and Mr. Mike Ketelaar, who is the Michigan president of NDA, or the National Deer Association. How you doing tonight, Mike?
Good. How are you, Jordan?
I'm excellent. We're enjoying some unseasonable temperatures here in the Northwest UP. It is absolutely scorching. It is high 80s. Yesterday we had 90. I don't know. I'm starting to become a believer in global warming. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, we've got, I'm down in the Kent County, Grand Rapids area, and we've had some warm temps, but looking at the forecast, it's supposed to be dropping a little bit, which I don't have a problem with, because I'm trying to get some guys out and help out with some farmers with some deer management. And so obviously we've got a cooler trailer, but it's a lot better hunting in 67-degree weather than 80 with mosquitoes buzzing around. So yeah, I'll take the Michigan up and down weather right now, as long as it allows us to get out there on some cool nights and try to help some farmers. So,
Heck yeah. Tim, what's it like in your neck of the woods tonight?
Oh, it's beautiful out here. It's low 70s, a nice little bit of a cool breeze, and sun is shining, and yeah, no complaints here.
Outstanding. Anybody been able to get out and chase gobblers at all? I have got a turkey tag literally rotting in my pocket. I haven't been out once.
yeah, I have a tag. I went out one time. Actually, Allie Pagels, she came down during Allie,
Mhm.
and she's on our state council for NDA, and she's also the vice chair of the Lower Peninsula Deer Advisory Team, and she wanted to try to hunt something different. She's just below the bridge, and they had those ice storms and everything like that.
Mhm.
And she had the first beginning of the season, and she came down here, and she shot a bird the first morning. I got to hang out the first couple hours with her, and then I had to kind of bounce and meet my dad, do some hinge cutting and habitat work in Ionia. But yeah, so about 2.5 hours, and then I've been working on helping farmers out with deer management using deer damage tags and such like that. So I my tag's there, and who knows, I might get out, I might not. I got other buddies hunting my land for turkeys. I love turkey hunting, but I hate turkey hunting. As soon as that tom hangs up at 90, I'm like, why am I out here? But
How about you, Tim? Have you had any chance to chase the gobblers at all?
Oh yeah. I actually filled my tag, I think the fifth day of season. Like Mike said, we had that nasty ice storm up here, so I ventured down to Washtenaw County and got to hunt some private land down there, and I killed my best bird yet. 10 and three
congrats.
quarter inch beard and an inch and a half spurs, a true limb hanger. So yeah,
Yeah,
I got a little emotional over that turkey. Like Mike said, you hate it and you love it.
yeah.
I sure loved it that day.
I forgot that you and Dennis had the dynamic duo going there. I forgot all about that. You guys
Yep.
hammered down and did some fishing afterwards. That was a nice trip for you.
Oh yeah, it was great. Fishing wasn't the best, but a bad day of fishing, I'll take any day over a day at work.
Yeah,
Heard that.
amen to that.
Well, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? You're born and raised Michigan guy. How did you get into hunting? How did you get involved with NDA? Tell us who Mike Ketelaar is a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jordan. Yeah, kind of right now, well, a little bit about where I'm at now, and I'll go backwards. So, just turned 40 at the end of April, and I'm a teacher and coach. So I'm a high school English teacher and a varsity boys and girls golf coach. That's kind of the professional side of things, and then obviously there's the deer hunting side of things. Got started pretty young, like a lot of us. My dad actually was not raised hunting by his father. My grandpa was a veteran, and got out, went right into the factory, and there wasn't time for outdoor activities. You had to work. You know what I mean? You had to work, and he was kind of that frame of mind. But I think around 17, 18, 19 years old, my dad asked some people that he knew, some buddies, to take him out hunting, and he kind of got the bug. And actually, when he was in his low 20s, he bought some hunting land in Morley. Um, So when I was young, I got to tag along with some of his buddies, and we had a small cabin and things like that. And um, I think the BB gun really got me going. I was just like, Chris's story. I wanted a BB gun so bad. I think I got one in first grade. We grew up on a few acres, and I just wreaked havoc out there. I was trying to shoot anything that moved, to be honest. And
the Red Ryder BB gun.
My dad knew he had a problem when the neighbor came over with his wooden bird feeder with BBs stuck in the side of it. And I had my own little blind set up on the side of the property. Of course, I had to shoot across the property line because that's where the birds were. But that kind of got me excited. I mean, I'd be out there for hours just walking on that BB gun. And then I kind of morphed into, hey, Dad, I want to get to camp with you guys. And I used to get sad because there was only one weekend they brought the boys, the young boys. And now I realize why. We were pains in the butt, you know what I mean? First, second graders, I'm cold. I don't want to get into a tree stand and all of that. But kudos to them. They kept us going through it. And but then it kind of took a sabbatical from that little bit of exposure. My dad coached my basketball, baseball, and football teams in middle school, and that really took up quite a bit of time. And then I think in high school, we really started to get back in it again. And we picked up some leases here in the Greater Grand Rapids area, which transitioned into, hey, we can only do so much with these leases. Let's really move forward. And so my dad purchased some land because we were excited about really doing some herd management and habitat management and having our own little piece of the American dream. And kind of around that time as well, once we procured those leases in that hunting land, I was actually at a Gander Mountain. Do you guys remember Gander Mountain?
Yeah.
Yeah. And on their bulletin board, there was this little, message to join a QDMA banquet locally. And I ripped that little tab off and showed up at that banquet. And kind of the rest is history. Fell in love with some of the guys that were there and the fun and camaraderie that was had at the banquet. And started off as a volunteer. This might have been 17 years ago. So a volunteer with the local branch, the West Central branch of QDMA at the time. And I turned into a glutton for punishment. I guess they saw some passion and leadership qualities in me. And so you probably both are accustomed to this. They kind of suckered me into getting involved in a more serious role. So then I became the vice president locally of the West Central branch. That's Kent County and Newaygo County of, QDMA. And then position kind of opened up to become president. And I was president of that branch for a while. And I'm coming on 2 years now of being the state council president of the Michigan National Deer Association. So it's kind of been a whirlwind. I think both of you probably, you sit back and reflect. We're a little bit older now and go, how did I get to where I'm at? And even today, prepping for this call, I was trying to piece together all the wonderful experiences I've had and how it got me here. But I'll tell you this, it takes a village to get to where we're at and all of the experiences that we've had and all the people we've interacted with and the lessons learned. And I just count my blessings that I'm able to be here hunting, leading, trying to be a steward for the resource and sharing that love and joy with other people.
Awesome. That's a good story. I enjoyed that one. The BB gun part had me rolling. I can identify with that.
Well, my dad, there was another one too. So my BB gun couldn't do everything my dad needed it to do. So we had some woodpeckers around our house as well. And his office was in the corner of the house. And there was a couple really elusive woodpeckers that I couldn't take care of. And my dad's like, dude, I'll give you $10 for every woodpecker that you kill. And I'm like, Dad, I'm trying, but this one's really smart. He goes, you tell me the next time that woodpecker lands on the side of the house. So I run upstairs and I tell him, and he takes the 12 gauge with birdshot, and he just comes out around the corner and shoots off the side of the house. And he goes, that's how you do it. And I'm like, okay, lesson learned. So smart work, not hard work, I guess, but.
Suddenly the neighbor's bird feeder didn't look so bad after that.
Oh yeah, shards of wood everywhere. But yeah, maybe that's a little bit of the Ketelaar impulsivity in us. I don't know. But no, it's been a blessed journey and kind of at a place now where had some awesome experiences, able to harvest, Quite a lot of deer opportunity to hunt in Illinois. My dad and I and a couple of my buddy and his dad, we've got some leases in Iowa, and kind of at a stage already at age 40 of giving back and seeing more of the big picture and being concerned about the future of getting more hunters involved and preserving the tradition that, all three of us love.
It's interesting how that happens, and I'll couch it as the maturation of the hunter, because you start out as a young man with kind of this, I got to get my buck, this bloodlust almost. You got to hang meat on the pole, and then it's kind of about a body count. Well, I got to fill my tags. I got to fill all the tags, and you grow and you learn along the way, and you mature, and your mindset changes, your attitude changes, and it starts to dawn on you that this is bigger than you. And
Yep.
as you grow and you mature, you want to be part of that thing that's bigger than all of us.
Yep.
And it's great that you've answered the call to do that. And I wish more Michigan hunters would follow suit. And I suppose we all mature and we grow at our own rate. Everybody's journey isn't the same, right? But it's a process.
Yeah, it definitely is. One thing my dad taught me, about hunting at a young age is he kind of gives his own narrative of, first I just wanted to see deer, and then I wanted to have deer within close proximity. Then I wanted to get a shot off. Then I was crossing my fingers that I hit the deer. Then I wanted to hit it and recover it. You know what I mean? It sounds kind of juvenile, but then it's okay. Then I want to do that to a buck, and then raise your level of that. But you finally get to a point, and you realize that now. I think my dad and I, a lot of our passion is the habitat management, watching deer work the landscape that we've manipulated, watching them utilize different hinge cut areas and different pathways and things like that. Personally, I run and I'm the president of 3 deer cooperatives. You know what I mean? Watching our local area grow in terms of our deer management and our habitat management. And I guess there's different seasons for things. I used to think a good season, Jordan and Tim, was shooting 2 bucks. I mean, 100%. That was my dad and I, and we didn't, probably up until the last 12 years, we didn't really harvest doe. My dad was of that, that frame of mind of, harvesting doe is taboo. Now it's ironic. I love harvesting doe. I bet you out of my last 40 deer harvested in Michigan, 38 of them are doe. And I'm really good at passing deer now. I'm not good at passing mature doe though. Bucks, I'm really good at passing. Mature does, I love putting doe down. And I never thought I'd get excited about that. I like to name a doe and try to pursue that one. And sometimes I get as much satisfaction as harvesting a buck I'm trying to pursue as that doe. And if you told me that 10 years ago, I'd look at you crazy, Jordan, crazy.
It's really interesting, the kind of the lore that hunters adopt at different points in their hunting career, right? And one of those things I find really funny, and this is true in both peninsulas, is there's a cross section of hunters that think does are dumb, and it's only the 8-point or the 10-point that has any brains. Let me tell you, some of the smartest deer I've ever hunted are those gray old swamp donkey does, the matriarch of the forest. They are so hard to kill.
Yep. Well, Jordan, in January, I was doing some urban deer management in the Grand Rapids area on that parcel of land. And I can tell you some of those doe there, and obviously I didn't harvest some of them, so I couldn't really age them accurately, in terms of, a jaw analysis and stuff. But I think they're mature, 7, 8, 9 years old, and they are not dumb. They have that protective mindset. A buck is selfish. All he's concerned about is himself. His defenses are for him. That doe is SEAL Team 6. They're in that group together, particularly late winter, herded up, and you got one doe, looking for the front, one's the back, and they're working in tandem, almost like velociraptors from Jurassic Park. I joke around, but clever girl. I've been busted more by doe, and they are the smartest in the woods, in my opinion. In Michigan, some 5 or 6 year old bucks could be pretty smart, but I don't think there's too many of those walking around. No.
No, I would wager a guess that most aren't seeing their 3rd birthday.
Yeah, I would I would agree with that. Things are improving, but when you talk about, in my experiences hunting in Illinois and Iowa, I don't think in Michigan we quite understand what a balanced herd and a mature herd is, with diverse age classes. And I've got to witness that, and that's kind of eye opening. So it gives us something to aspire to in Michigan to try to build that sort of experience with a more well-rounded and healthy herd with some balanced ratios.
And that kind of leads right into where I want to take this conversation next, Tim and Mike. Tell us about the organization. Tell us the core tenets of the faith, if you will, with NDA. What do you guys stand for? What do you do? I mean, you guys just have, a gun raffle and, do a few things locally, or how does your organization work? What do you do? What are you involved in?
Yeah, so it's pretty robust. Obviously, it's a nationwide organization. Michigan's one of the largest states in terms of membership and such. I guess I'll speak from. Would you like me to speak from the national lens or from the state of Michigan lens?
Michigan's fine.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so our main pillars are obviously one of them is policy and advocacy. Another main pillar that we have is education and outreach. And then you've got R3, which is obviously recruitment, retention, and reactivation. And finally, conservation. And underneath conservation, you've got herd management, habitat management, herd health, things of that nature. And so kind of the way Michigan NDA is set up is there's a little bit of a kind of a flow chart of you've got our state council, which I'm president of. It's myself and 6 other people. So we got a treasurer, director of habitat and conservation. We've got Todd Johnson, our head of advocacy and policy. We've got education, outreach, all of those things. So basically our roles kind of emulate those main pillars. And we've got about 13 branches, and a branch can be 1 county, 2 counties, or 3 counties. So we have 13 branches throughout the state, and then about 40,000 members. And what we're really doing is trying to push those main missionary elements. We try to protect the majority of year and a halves. We're trying to increase antlers harvest where necessary. We're trying to work in tandem with the NRC and DNR and other stakeholder groups to try to use sound science to manage deer and manage the habitat. Venison donations, a huge part of one thing that we're working with. Our state council in particular, we work closely with the DNR's Hunter Feeding Michigan, Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger, Doe Patrol, any venison donation entity we're supporting the best that we can financially and other means as well. And then R3, getting people out in the woods. Our Field the Fork program and Share Your Hunt program has been really successful throughout the nation. Essentially, the Field the Fork came out of Athens, Georgia, and that's the concept there is to try to get non-hunting adults involved and use venison kind of as the conduit to do it as a sustainable, healthy resource, source of protein. And that's been really successful. So we do that. The Share Your Hunt is basically taking out maybe people that don't have great access to land or youth hunters and things like that. So it's funny that you talk about, having a gun raffle or a banquet. Those things don't even really cross my mind. I focus on all of our missionary elements and just trying to use sound science, trying to make deer management fun, trying to make hunting fun. And it seems too often, Jordan, you and I often talk about this, is as deer hunters, we become way too divisive. We're eventually going to lead to our own demise. And, if I asked you, Tim and Jordan, your whys, they'd probably parallel mine as well as other hunters in Michigan. But so that's one thing I'm really trying to work on. And it seems even within stakeholders groups, there's decisiveness or divisiveness, is trying to bring some synergy and alignment, talking about our whys. Why are we actually here? Jordan, you're, the chair of the UP DAT team, and I'm the chair of the LP DAT team. And I think that's one thing that you and I have to focus on as leaders, is focus on what we have in common, not those differences. And with my leadership right now, I'm trying to bridge that gap. But I'll be honest with you, Tim, Jordan, it's really challenging. Hunters are a unique breed. We're kind of stuck in our ways. And but if I can, in my tenure with Michigan NDA, if I can try to break down some of those barriers and build stronger relationships with hunters around us, and focus on what we have in common, I think that'd be a success.
Absolutely. I mean, that's an excellent point. And it's funny because we had a guest on last night and we actually were talking about that very same topic. And, last Thursday's commission meeting was really special for that reason, because that Joe with the bow issue for the UP was the first time in a long time that I've seen a pile of clubs, organizations, rank and file, unaffiliated hunters all unite on one issue and say, hey, this needs to get fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And it crossed the finish line. It was a huge win. And it wasn't just a win for the UP hunters. I believe it was a win for the entire hunting community. And it showed people what can happen if there's alignment, if there's passion that is directed in a proper way, in a positive way, and mobilized. Anything's possible. And I think it's a very positive stepping stone going forward.
Yeah, and I think to take that a step further, Jordan, I watched your testimony in front of the NRC last Thursday, and you mentioned when science is on your side, it's not challenging. And obviously, the National Deer Association, in my opinion, I think we're one of the most credible organizations because we base all of our beliefs and our position statements on sound science, with research that we gather from universities and things like that. And in some sense, NDA is kind of the academic science soundboard. And you can't, some of the Facebook lore and the wives' tales and deer management philosophies from 40 years ago, they can be easily debunked with logic, fact, and science. And so I also think that was a win with the doe and the bow in the UP. Obviously, that synergy and alignment amongst hunters coming together, but then also I think science spoke. And hopefully the same thing happens with the coyote issue that's being tabled and pushed right now.
That's an interesting discussion all its own, and I don't care if we briefly take that rabbit hole. That has been one of the hottest issues I've seen in a while in Michigan, is this whole coyote season fiasco. And as I read through some of the comments and feedback from people on social media and whatnot, there's a lot of confusion, it seems like, as to why the commission didn't vote last month or this month, and there's anger surrounding that. And certainly, you can make the argument, well, vote the science. It's that simple. But there is nuance, as you know, Mike. There are things happening in the background. There are things going on and conversations being had, information being shared that the public might not be aware of. So I think it's important that the public kind of understand that there are people going to battle on these issues and standing on truth and standing on science. And it certainly will be addressed. It's not going to be swept under the rug. It's not going to be let go. It's not just going to go away. But the people have got to be just a little bit more patient.
And that's funny that you say that, because I'm kind of one of them. After that meeting, I wasn't able to attend because I had coaching responsibilities. But usually I'm pretty patient. But I'm kind of like, man, I'm tired of hearing about it. Let's make a decision. Let's move on to it. And it goes to a conversation that you and I had, Jordan. You were speaking with a gentleman before the meeting started, and they kind of had that same idea. Man, I wish we could just get an answer and have it done with. And then you jokingly but seriously said, hey, I've been at this doe with the bow thing for 10 years. So there's not immediate gratification. If you spend a few minutes on social media, you'll see everyone's pointing fingers. It's blame. Things need to be done right now. And unfortunately, and Jordan, you've been immersed in the policy and advocacy longer than I have. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it takes consistency. It takes a consistent message, using the right tools, communicating with the right people, and sometimes that victory might come later, and you're not going to be at the table to actually see it. I kind of likened it to spreading the word of God. You plant seeds all over the place, and you some of them you might not get to see come into fruition and bear fruit. But pretty simply, either part of the problem or part of the solution. And I know, Jordan, you want to be part of the solution, and as do I. And it doesn't mean that we're always going to have the answers, but as long as we're in the fight, that's what matters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that it's probably pretty reasonable to anticipate a conclusion to the Coyote matter here next month. I would, based on everything that I'm hearing, I think that there's going to be some movement on the issue. What are you hearing, Mike?
I'm not hearing a whole lot on it at the moment. But then again, I haven't really tried to beat the drum to hear what's happening there. But I think they're going to have to. I think the pressure is there. I think their minds are made up. And I have no way to I can't really bring substance to that, but that's just kind of my gut feeling. And I hope they make the right decision, because if they don't, a lot of credibility could be in question. And I don't think our resource and those that manage it right now, we're in a place where credibility and distrust can happen. It's kind of make or break time, if that makes sense, Jordan.
It does. And, you served on the DMI last year, as did I. And I won't even get into that dumpster fire that ended badly for all concerned, most of all the resource. And I think everybody was really hungry for change. And last year was kind of, you're jonesing for that monster bacon cheeseburger, and you bit into a couple soggy buns with some lettuce. That's what we got last year. And I think that this year, there's some positivity, and there's been some changes in the composition of the Natural Resources Commission. I'm being told that Commissioner Becky Humphreys, who was formerly vice chair, is going to step into chairwoman to backfill Chairman Kilde's role. And for those that don't know, Becky Humphreys once upon a time was a DNR director. She was also formerly head of National Wild Turkey Federation. She did a lot of good work for them, from what I understand. So I think it brings a different dynamic to the commission itself when you have someone with an entire career span of biological experience at their disposal. And I think that we're going to start seeing decisions that align with science and data and evidence a lot more as a result. What are your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, I do agree that composition is changing, and you and I had a conversation a few days ago. Hopefully we're not drinking Kool-Aid coming off this recent success, but I genuinely do think the composition's better, and I think we might be getting to a place where we can really make some positive changes for the resource. Sorry, be that regulatory or non-regulatory. I know after kind of the DMI situation that we both went through, Michigan NDA, we brought a resolution forth to MUCC, and it was and it got passed through by the votes that are there, is essentially challenging the NRC to kind of give an orientation to all new commissioners, almost like a tutorial on the species in which they're going to be making regulation decisions on, which it's kind of silly that needs to happen, that there's prerequisite knowledge that needs to be there. But that was kind of our way to really try to put some pressure in that these individuals that are appointed, they need pedigree, they need experience, they need knowledge on the resource, is the multiple resources that they're making these regulations for. Otherwise, why are they there? That's concerning when you have at times, and there's some really brilliant people that are on the commission currently, but what if there's a situation in which someone is elected and put on there or appointed, and they really don't know what they're doing? You could have people like yourself, Jordan Hoover, sitting in front of them on a Thursday talking about the UP, and you know more about deer and deer management than they do, which, those things might happen, but I think there still needs to be a baseline level of knowledge that is there. And so I think that's something that's crucial,
And you bring up an excellent point, and I'll just pick on myself here. Let's say hypothetically that I got appointed as a commissioner. I'm really comfortable with my knowledge base about deer. I'm really comfortable with my knowledge base about bears, about wolves. Now, you start talking to me about steelhead, you start talking to me about grouse, I'm out of my depth. I
Yep.
really am. I have just a surface knowledge, rudimentary at best in that subject matter. So I think even in the best case scenarios where you have someone that is an outdoorsman, that is a fisherman, that is a hunter, that is a trapper, who
Mhm.
lives the life, chances are we're all specialists in a way, right? Like nobody does it all and
Yep.
nobody knows it all about everything. So implementing that educational portion for the commissioners, I think is valuable no matter what your knowledge base is, no matter where you're starting.
Yeah. And I also think one thing that kind of our team has talked about, well, we haven't really done much with this, but and so when commissioners maybe are a little naive on a particular topic, like if you were a commissioner, Jordan, and you lured to steelhead, you might reach out to a fellow commissioner that knows more about steelhead, or maybe you'd reach out to stakeholder leaders that are in that realm. I'd take it a step further. I think we should almost have like a one pager in which they can call reputable and credible resources outside of the state of Michigan and bring in some voices and experts that might not have that might not be involved in Michigan directly, because I think sometimes false information can be fed to commissioners by particular organizations, maybe not in a malicious way, but I think objective soundboarding could be something that could be added as well from organizations, and even natural resource commissioners from other states or DNR representatives from other states, kind of get an objective lens about some of these questions as well, not just from the voices in Michigan, which can often be um, have an agenda maybe, or just be only see things through that particular lens.
I had an individual ask me one time, somebody within the department, basically they wanted to know if the things that they were hearing from some other organizations were credible or not. He asked me straight up, "Are they telling me the truth?" And I thought about it for a split second because some of the things that were being said, weren't accurate. And I was careful in how I answered it. And I said it this way: I said, absolutely, it's true. They're telling you the truth as they know it.
Precisely.
But there is a perspective differential between hunters, between fishermen, between trappers, in the minutia of how we go about things. You might have a guy that, he's a saddle hunter, he's a mobile hunter, he's all over the place, he's covering 3 counties, he's got 500 trail cameras, he's really knowledgeable.
Mhm.
And then you've got a guy that, he goes to the corner of his 40-acre plot and sits in the box blind, turns on the buddy heater, and his truth is whatever's in the box blind window.
Yeah.
Is he lying? No, absolutely not. But it's a differential in perspective. And when you get that outside, unbiased, third-party input, like you're talking about, Mike, I think that begins to bridge those gaps and help put those puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, we see our reality, and so when you hunt multiple counties, and you're traveling, Jordan, when you hunt the UP and with your family, and you're putting in the miles, you're seeing a different experience than that person that just goes to their back 40, and the deer are just supposed to be there. They're just supposed to be there. I often talk with buddies of mine that duck hunt, and I'm like, well, why do people go to Saginaw Bay? If we were sitting at the coffee table on a Saturday and I was telling you guys, yeah, man, I've been fishing the last 5 Saturdays and I've not caught a fish, you guys would probably look at me like I was a poor fisherman. I wasn't very good at it, because sometimes you do need to move to where the fish are, or the ducks are, or the deer are. Just because you buy a tag doesn't mean that the DNR is supposed to put that resource right in front of you. I think we've lost a little bit of and it's one thing I like about your style of hunting, Jordan, is the woodsmanship. I think we've lost that. I think we've lost the art form. It's hunting. It's not killing. You need to put some effort in. You need to pursue. And would I love everyone to walk out their back door and have a fulfilled hunting experience? Of course I would, but it's not the reality we have. but we shouldn't manage the resource based on a limited lens of what somebody sees. It needs to be more diversified than that, because a mile down the road, someone's experience could be completely different, and they're overrunneth with deer, you know what I mean, or whatever that resource might be.
No, you're absolutely right. And I couched it this way one time. I said every once in a while you run into that guy, right? You're going to the launch and you're putting in your boat. You're going to go out and enjoy an evening on the water, and there's another guy docking up on the other side. Hey, how'd you do today? Oh, not for crap. There's nothing. Oh, the fish ain't bite. I don't even. It's terrible. It's terrible. We ain't even coming back here. And then you go out there and you limit out, and it's a banner night. Well, what's the difference? I don't know. Maybe he was throwing chartreuse and you're throwing hot pink or red and white, whatever. There's 1,000 different reasons the ball may or may not bounce your way. And, a lot of times we get caught up in our own experiences. And that's the biggest thing that I would encourage, Michigan hunters and fishermen to do, is to have open, honest conversations with other guys who do it different than you do it. And it's good. The old scripture, iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another, right? We can all learn from each other. We can gain information. And I think especially guys, right? A lot of guys, especially hunters, tend to have that kind of alpha male, I'll do it myself, I don't need your advice sort of mentality, right? And when we're able to put that ego in park a little bit and have some of these open, honest conversations, whether it be about hunting tactics, whether it be about habitat improvement strategies, whether it be about regulations, if we can have those open, honest, not ego-driven conversations, there's some incredible things that we can glean from those conversations.
Yeah, and on the flip side of oftentimes, like I obviously, Jordan, my dad and I work really hard on our habitat improvements, and it's a year-round enterprise for us. But I also need to be cognizant as a leader of Michigan NDA is my reality is not what a lot of hunters may interact with in Michigan. And I also need to be very cognizant of that and how we approach our education and, our messaging, because that's not fair either. Not everyone has that time and energy to, procure leases and land and habitat improvements and, the private land mindset. And, in QDMA, and I'll be honest, QDMA and NDA for, a long time, there's this perception that it's the elite hunter and that sort of thing. And yeah, some of our leaders, they've worked hard. They have pretty decent hunting properties, but as far as an organizational standpoint, I think we need to get a little bit better at, and particularly in Michigan, of just really wondering what the average hunter in Michigan is experiencing, what they're looking for. So 2 years when I took over for Eric Schnell as state president, Anna Mitterling and I, we developed a survey that we put out, and about 700 hunters in Michigan responded to it, because I generally want to get a pulse on what Michigan hunters were thinking and feeling. And the results of that really helped open my eyes, even when it comes from regulation, because just because my experience is this, we can't just advocate for regulations that don't fit everyone's experience, which again is really hard when I'm saying, Jordan, to try to find something. But it goes back to basics. I think in Michigan, we need to harvest less bucks, and we need to harvest more doe. We need to improve habitat, and we need to get more people involved in hunting. And really, when it comes to the work that you and I've been doing with the DMI and the DAT team, I think that high level statement right there is it. That's everyone's why. We all agree on it, but the nuances of how we're going to get there is kind of the challenge at times. And I think, I see all the time, Jordan, and I do this as well. I back people from the DNR. They always seem to get mud thrown at them, but I think they mean really well, and there's some great people there, and they're educated. Deer management's not easy, and I think pointing the finger is not the way to do it. Just trying to bring more alignment amongst hunters and those that are preserving the resource.
So one question I have for you, Early on in the conversation, you talked about QDMA, and then of course now it's NDA, National Deer Association. So there was a change, there was a transition there, and obviously a rebranding, I'll call it.
Yep.
So what was that change, and how is the NDA different than the old QDMA?
Yeah, I get that question quite a bit. From my experience, there isn't much of much of a different there. I think it's just a rebranding a little bit. I think that QDMA might have been a little elitist. Some people viewed that, and so NDA, obviously, the slogan is United for Deer, and it's kind of a more inclusive brand, if you will. And we're trying to bring hunters in from all walks of life, and educate them on sound science and deer management. I personally haven't seen much of a transition. I think on the back end, there's some better business decisions that are being made with the 503C that we have. Um, and all of the changes have been really positive in my mind. Um, I think we're trying to get back to grassroots, really focus on the individual hunter and their experience and educating them. And the biggest thing is preserving the hunting tradition, and the resource is really at the front and or at our forefront of our minds right now. I mean, our mission statement is ensuring the future of wild deer, wildlife habitat, and hunting. And I think that's something that we're trying to go back to and really focus on. So, name change, a little bit of rebranding, United for Deer, a little more inclusive, because I'll be honest, there was a period of time there where the word quality started to get a negative connotation. Um, and I think we're just trying to get back to basics and get back to the grassroots and just really focus on that sound science and management, and bringing people of all walks of life to the table. We're doing that in Michigan with the Hunt Michigan Collaborative NDA Farm Tour. We're probably going to have 140 some new hunters out there this year, which is a big deal. Um, Big Brothers Big Sisters, we're going to be mentoring students in that program, trying to get those kids out hunting. I mean, today when I was at Jude's barbershop, the woman cutting my hair, she saw my hat that I had on, and she goes, "What's that?" And can't make this up, she's never hunted before, and she would like me to take her out in Kent County and mentor her this year. So, and she does not come from a hunting family. She's never hunted in her life. She does not look like someone that you would think would be a deer hunter. And so I think the word inclusive gets thrown around a little bit too much, but just providing opportunities for anyone that wants it, because hunter numbers are dwindling. And we don't want to be an exclusive organization. We want to be an organization where people can see themselves in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess to that end, that kind of funnels into my next question. And I mean, this, Mike. I'm sure that you've heard it and you've gotten the question before. You've dealt with it. At one time, there was kind of this stigma with QDMA and perhaps even with NDA. Well, those guys are just a bunch of trophy hunters just pushing APRs. That's all they want is APRs. That's the only thing they do. Push back on that. Correct the record for me on that, Mike.
Yeah. You see what people see, what they see. And I'll be blunt and honest. I think for a while there, we our leadership was losing sight of our core missionary pillars. We were doing amazing grassroots work during that time period, but it seemed like we were, especially when the microphone was there, we were beating on that. And I'm not saying that was good, bad, or indifferent, but I think we lost sight at that period of time of who we really are and what we really stand for. Simply put, when it comes to buck management, the stance of the National Deer Association is trying to protect the majority of year and a halves. If you look at Michigan and where we're at now, we are doing that. 70%, 77, 76% of the deer harvested meet APR standards. And I think the messaging at that point in time was buck centric in terms of how we were delivering it. Part of it was really to try to increase the antlers harvest, but I don't think we did a very good job explaining that all the time. We had that 5-county CWD study, and basically you had Kent County and what would have been Kent County and Newaygo were not APRs. And then you had Montcalm, Ionia, and Mecosta, I think they were. And the increase in antlers harvest, from my analysis of the data, putting aside these large confidence intervals that the department may have had at that time, it did increase antlers harvest. The real push was trying to increase the antlers harvest with the side effect of getting some more bucks to, live a little bit longer, like you were talking about the third birthday.
Yeah.
And we were always much more than that. And when I took over 2 years ago, I made a conscious effort to make sure that we had a well-balanced approach in Michigan. We were working equally on education and outreach, conservation, R3, policy and advocacy. And it seems like, any time when you're trying to make change, you can get pigeonholed into one facet. And I think we were at that point in time. And I just been working hard the last couple of years to try to, make it a little more well-rounded, focus equally on all of our pillars. And I think we're doing a pretty good job, and our state council is doing that. Personally, policy and advocacy is not what gets me up in the morning, Jordan. You and I talk about that a lot. I love R3. I love venison donation program. I love education. And I don't know how long I'll be doing this and leading the state, but when the dust settles, I would love to be known for diversified mission. You know what I mean? Real grassroots that we're highlighting and we're investing our time and energy in. And that's one reason why, I brought Anna Mitterling back to the table, and she's helping us out she started a small LLC, Michigan Insights Consulting. First thing I did in the first month was bring her on board, and we lost a co-op coordinator, a deer co-op coordinator. That was funded by multiple entities, and now she's back in that game because I truly believe deer cooperatives are a way to increase hunter satisfaction and really manage the deer at a local landscape. Sure, wide arching regulations can be helpful, but like you said, Jordan, those things take time.
Right.
And so really investing in those co-ops has been something else that I think is really important. And right now, I think we're at 64 deer cooperatives now throughout the state of Michigan, and those are growing. And it comes down to, I'm not going to sit around, Jordan, and the land that I hunt and lease. They're all in cooperatives. Takes a lot of time and energy to get those local landowners involved with you, gentleman handshakes and all of that. It's messy work, but you can get immediate gratification and satisfaction from that. You can see things happen quickly at a smaller landscape level. We'll still fight, regulations at the high level. But I think I want to advocate for taking control of, your backyard and those around you, while simultaneously advocating for regulations holistically that can help out the entire resource throughout the state.
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, that's really where the metal hits the meat. Is there's so many things that the individual hunter can do and can engage in without going to Lansing. I mean, that's not everybody's forte, right? Not everybody's going to show up to commission meetings or petition to be a part of the deer advisory team. That's not everybody's thing. But there's a lot of good things that people can participate in, engage in, be a part of, that do good on a localized level. And when you get a lot of people doing things on a localized level, you have a big impact. It's a ripple effect. So I definitely agree with that. And the importance of that grassroots work is undeniable. In our last few minutes here tonight, Mike, I was wondering if you'd be so kind. We mentioned earlier that you were the chairman for the Lower Peninsula Deer Advisory Team this year and for the next 3 years, foreseeably. Tell us about, what got done in 25 and what you're hopeful to do in 26. What can you tell us a little bit there, Mike?
Yeah, so in 25, our team came up with 2 formal recommendations. One was the same as your team and your Peninsula, Jordan, that was reversing the decision about the Independence Liberty Hunt. And our team knew the purpose of that was to kind of raise awareness. I really think that's why it was brought to the table, to highlight the fact that we need to increase our antlerless harvest. And I think the message got through, but we unanimously wanted to allow, antler deer to be harvested during that hunt. So that was recommendation 1. Let's see here. Recommendation 2. Gosh, you're putting me on the spot right now, Jordan. What was our second one? I feel silly right now.
The buck reg?
Yeah, the buck reg. Thank you. So ours was to kind of a combo tag tweak. Thank you, Jordan. It's been a long day. Thanks for that little hint there. We were advocating for a combo tweak. Essentially, that would be allowing the combo tag to be 1 buck and 1 doe. That was brought to the table, but that can't happen. We were told from the AG's office and other entities, there needs to be some legislative language that changes, and you and I are aware of that, Jordan. And the third thing our team was talking about, but it never really came into fruition with our time frame, was trying to address antlerless deer management and trying to increase antlerless harvest, particularly with messing around with some regions and trying to have some particular quotas and such for those. I think that's something that we'll come back to in 2026, but I genuinely, and again, I'm just a facilitator like you are as the chair. We don't have that much power, Jordan. We listen to what the team says and we try to facilitate that. But I would love to see us focus in 2026 on a buck reg, not just for trying to grow bigger bucks. I think buck regs can help increase antlerless harvest, help with herd health, and balance sex ratios and age ratios. That is sound deer management, science-based. And I also think that I would love to see us focus on how do we increase antlerless harvest where necessary. And our team has a lot of creative ideas going back from our drawing board from the DMI that I think we're going to touch back on. I know we have several people on our team very passionate about urban deer management. And specifically, there's some work that I'm doing in the Kent County area, helping out some cities and townships with that. And also farmers with crop damage. So I think it goes back to the high level thing, Jordan. How can we protect more bucks and try to get rid of this buck centric mindset that we have in Michigan that plagues us? Let's be honest, we're the laughing stock in the Midwest compared to other states when you look at the data. We do not take antlerless harvest serious. We're really, really good at killing bucks. And then I think out of the DMI, that Hunt Michigan Collaborative from an R3 perspective was a really cool non-regulatory success, and hopefully our team can help push that. But I think getting a buck reg, trying to figure out how to increase antlerless harvest, helping out with urban deer management, I think those are some of the main things, and maybe even touching, Jordan, upon our data from the DMI told us these long seasons aren't the answer.
Right.
So I think another thing that hopefully our team will want to discuss is just humor the idea of shortening seasons.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of my 2 cents. I can't really steer the ship that much. I'm more of a facilitator, but I would be extremely happy if 2026 there was a buck reg. Our team put some pressure to get the legislative language changed to at least open the door for things like the combo tag tweak or a 1 buck rule or earn a second buck, because coming out of the DMI, earn a second buck was our highest supported buck regulation actually for the lower peninsula, which couldn't happen because of that. So hopefully our team could maybe get a letter of support going and get some legislators to work hard to try to change that language and work on the antlerless harvest, because
for sure
we need to, just like you guys up there. And you've got one extra tool in your tool belt now, and hopefully that'll work out for y'all.
I've been telling everybody I talk to that right now at this particular point in time, and like you said earlier, hopefully I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yep.
I'm really optimistic about the work that our respective DAT teams are going to do this coming year. And I think there's a strong possibility for some alignment on some of these things, between our 2 peninsulas. And that's great. I'd love to work across the Big Mac whenever I can, because, contrary to what some people might say, deer biology is the same in Isabella County as it is in Houghton County. There's nuance, there's variation to our environments, but deer biology is always the same. The core principles are always the same.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited what 2026 is going to bring. I'm looking forward to it. I feel energized, eager to get back to work, and I'm pretty sure probably the majority of our teams are feeling similarly. I think this last commission meeting was definitely a much needed shot in the arm, and I think it demonstrates that the commission is listening. They're hearing input from the advisory teams. They're hearing input from the groups, and that's really important. I think that we have finally gotten out of the shadow of the DMI, and we're moving forward in a positive fashion. And I'm really hopeful that we can do some good things in 2026.
Yeah, and you mentioned the composition of the NRC. I'm optimistic as well. There's some changes there, and I've never talked to you about this, Jordan, but looking back, it's kind of a blessing that things were not taken serious, our suggestions from the DMI, because it kind of leveraged it now that I think they got their hand slapped a little bit. You know what I mean? How all that time and energy and all that education and resources, and they basically kind of all but ripped it all up, and it hurt at the time. But I think going forward, it's going to leverage us for them to take us more serious because of the backlash that they had from that. You know what I mean? So I agree with you. Hopefully I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid either, but definitely the success in the UP was a nice little steroid shot to get us rolling. And I look forward to collaborating with you and working with the department to kind of set up a timeline and things like that. And I do agree that deer management transcends the bridge. And there's some things that we can align on, and there's strength in numbers. So I look forward to that. And to the public listening right now, I'll just say that the deer management and chairing these two teams, Jordan, is not easy. Everyone means well. They've got different philosophies on how things can be done, but I'm excited to be a part of that journey with you. And at the end of the day, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. And I'm excited to co-chair with you the Peninsulas, and let's see in 2026, Jordan, if we can keep moving that needle in a positive direction to do what's best for the resource and then hunter satisfaction secondary.
Well, one thing I know for sure, history is written by those who show up.
Yep.
So, Mike, as we close out our evening here, if I'm a person who's listening to this podcast or watching live right now, and I want to get more information about your organization, how I can get involved with NDA, where can I find that information? Social media, webpage, where can I find information?
You know me, Jordan. I'm pretty direct. I could give our national website. I could give the Facebook page, but I'll genuinely say that if anyone wants to learn more about Michigan NDA, or they have any questions on here, or they've got any challenging questions for me, Jordan, I never hide. I always put my name and number out there on social media. And I have no problem if, Tim, you do that same thing right now. If anyone has any questions or concerns, reach out to me, Mike Ketelaar. My phone number is 616-813-4765. Again, that's 616-813-4765. And I just prefer that direct nature. Why people's time are valuable, why get them down the rabbit hole of social media or a website. They can call me up directly, and I'd love to help navigate them if they want to get involved or they have any questions. I'm an open book, as you know, Jordan, and I'd appreciate the phone calls, because I like to learn what hunters are thinking, and maybe there's things that we can improve upon as an organization as well. No one's perfect.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Mike. I really appreciate your time and you sharing the perspective and your passion for deer management, habitat, and really the whole spectrum of conservation. I thank you for all your effort and your enduring commitment. And, thank you for all your work with the LPDAT. That is a tremendous undertaking. And I wish you and your team luck going into 2026.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jordan, and thanks for having me on, Tim. And Jordan, kudos to you too for leading the UP and the recent success. And I know it's been an uphill battle, but it probably feels good to get that victory. And proud to know you as a friend and a steward of the resource. So thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, gentlemen.